Hello again, and this is part 2 of What If Kamen Rider OOO was in RWBY, so let's start. Chapter 2, Welcome to Beacon, OOO. I was shocked that the so-called dust can explode from a simple sneeze. Thanks, Ank. I thanked him. Like I said before, it is trouble for me if you don't survive. Ank muttered. I still need you for gathering cell metals. I know I don't remember much of the show, but I know there is more to this of him, keeping me alive. But what? I guess I should have watched the series again and again back home. We looked back as we saw that girl covered in soot, but it quickly disappears. Unbelievable. This is exactly the kind of thing I was talking about. Ruby looked apologetic and embarrassed. I'm really sorry. Ugh, you complete dolt. What are you even doing here? Aren't you a little too young to be attending Beacon? Well, This isn't your ordinary combat school. It's not just sparring and practice, you know. We're here to fight monsters, so watch where you're going. Weiss exclaimed. I was about to defend Ruby once more until she spoke up. Hey, I said I was sorry, princess. She said, finally fed up with what Weiss said. It's Eris, actually. Another voice said. All three of us, including Ank, looked as we saw a girl who looks to be 17 as well. She has long, wavy black hair that stops at her waistline. She was wearing a black button vest with coattails and a white, sleeveless undershirt that exposes part of her midriff with white shorts that have a zipper on the front of each leg. Stockings that start off black at her hips, but gradually fade to purple as they near her black low-heeled boots adorn her legs and feet. The outside of the stockings have white symbols on the side, appearing to be belladonna flowers. She wears black ribbons on both of her arms, with a black detached sleeve and a silver band on her left arm. Around her neck is a detached scarf-like collar. Her skin has a light olive similar to mine, but she was adorned with amber-colored eyes which are complemented by light purple eyeshadow which flare backwards. Due to her naturally upward shifting eyes, along with her purple ball upon her hair, she strangely has a distinctly cat-like appearance. Weiss Schnee, heiress to the Schnee Dust Company. One of the largest producers of energy propellant in the world. The pale girl now named Weiss smiled. Finally. Some recognition. She said. The same company infamous for its controversial labor forces and questionable business partners. She added. Weiss looked pissed as Ruby chuckled. Well, how dare you, the nerve of. Ugh. She then grabs the bottle that the girl had and walked away with her helpers gather the luggage and follow. Ruby falls back to the ground on her back. Welcome to Beacon. She muttered. No kidding. I said. And thanks, Enrique, for trying to defend me from her. Ruby thanked. It's what friends do. I smiled. I then saw a guy with messy blonde hair and dark blue eyes. He was wearing a white chest plate and shoulder armor. Under the armor, he wears a black hoodie with reddish-orange sleeves and a symbol hidden underneath the chest plate. He also wears blue pants with a white patch on the left knee, as well as black shoes. He has two belts crisscrossing his waist, both different shades of brown, with a pair of small pouches on them, brown wrist-length gloves with exposed fingertips and a small metal plate on the back. His sword is strapped to the left side of his waist in a sheath that doubles as a collapsible shield. He was holding his hand out to Ruby. Hey! I'm John. He introduced himself. She took his hand and stood up. Ruby. She said until she realized something. Aren't you the guy that threw up on the ship? Oh yeah, I remember someone almost threw up in the ship. Almost got on my shoes too. We were walking inside the walls of Beacon, which was filled with scenic trees, arching architecture, and a winding road alongside a river, which we were walking down. The guy now named John was talking to Ruby as we tagged along. All I'm saying is that motion sickness is a much more common problem than people let on. He explained. Ruby was laughing. Look, I'm sorry. Vomit Boy was the first thing that came to my mind. Oh, yeah? What if I called you Crater Face? He countered. Hey, that explosion was an accident. Ruby argued. She's right, you know. I said. I saw it firsthand. Oh, I never got your name. John said. Name's Enrique. I introduced as I then looked at Ank. And this is my partner, Ank. Hey there. John said to Ank, but he just looked at him before ignoring him. What's with him? Well, it is kinda hard to explain, but it is not important. I answered. So your name's John? Yeah. The name's John Ark. Short, sweet, rolls off the tongue, ladies love it. Do they? Ank questioned as he looked skeptic. They will. Well, I hope they will. My mom always says that. Never mind. Doubt it. He said. Rui giggled. So, I got this thing. She suddenly got out a large red scythe and stabs it to the ground. I looked at it in both awe and shock. I mean, this my first time seeing it up close. Whoa! Is that a scythe? John asked. It's also a customizable high-impact sniper rifle. She added. My jaw dropped. It is also a gun? Just how badass is that weapon? What's next? Wha? John asked, confused. She meant to say it is also a gun. I said to make it more simple. Oh. That's cool. John said. So what VE you got? She asked John. Oh. He unsheathed his sword. I got this sword. Oh who? Yeah, and I've got a shield, too. John states while he gets his scabbard, raises his arm and expands the metal into a shield. I gotta admit, it is cool. Ruby reached and touched the shield. So, what do they do? John begins fumbling with the shield as it retracts off his arm, expands, and retracts again before putting it back in place and finally shrinking it down for good, placing it on his belt. The shield gets small, so when I get tired of carrying it, I can just put it away. But wouldn't it weigh the same? Ruby asked. John slumped down, dejectedly. Yeah, it does. Ruby giggles a bit. Well, I'm kind of a dork when it comes to weapons, so I guess I did go a little overboard when designing it. Wait, you made that? I exclaim in shock. Not only she can fight and wield that side gun hybrid, but she made it. Of course. All students at Signal forge their own weapons. Ruby answered before looking at John. Didn't you make yours? It's a hand-me-down. My great-great-grandfather used it to fight in the war. The blonde knight explained. Sounds more like a family heirloom to me. Ruby laughs a bit. Well, I like it. Not many people have an appreciation for the classics these days. John sheathes his sword. Yeah, the classics. Ruby then looked at me. What about you? Don't you have any cool weapons? She asked. I actually don't have a weapon, to be honest. I answered. What? But how will you defend yourself against the Grim? John asked, shocked. I was about to point at Ank until we heard a bike noise. We looked back at the entrance and saw a black bike with someone on it. He looked a bit sketchy, but he entered and looked around until he noticed me and Ank. He reached to the back of his bike and got out a long box with a bow and walked towards us. A birthday present from the boss man, the biker said as he handed me the box. Huh? I said as I looked at it. I opened it and saw a sword to my surprise. It was a long blade that was black with a silver and blue edge, blue lining, and an empty part in the center, shaped like it was meant to hold coins. It also had a lever on and a slot. This was that sword AG used, the Metajalabur. Ank looked a bit shocked knowing I got a sword that can use cell metals. Thanks. I said to the biker. He nodded as he walked away and got onto his bike before entering a ship that soon flew away. I got the sword out of the box along with the cell medals placed in my pocket. OOO! Let me see. Let me see. Ruby said in joy and stars in her eyes. I looked at the sword before looking at Ruby, who used a weapon that was the ultimate weakness to most people, the puppy eyes. Interesting sword. John comment. I looked at Ruby knowing she has those puppy eyes. I don't know, Ruby. I said. Please? She pleaded as her puppy eyes went into full-on cuteness. All right. I said as I handed it to her. She was looking at it in awe. This looks so cool. She said. I wonder what the slot here does. She peeked in the slot knowing it leads to the empty part in the sword. I grabbed the sword as I also noticed a metal sheath in the box, so I grabbed it and placed it over my back and slowly sheathed the Metagaliber, knowing that this is the first time that I will be using a sword. At least I now have a weapon. I said. Still, how is this the actual Metagaliber, and who did he mean by boss man? Who made it for you anyway? Ruby asked. Don't know, but that guy said his boss. I answered. Then how does he know you? I shrugged. Don't know either. I said. But I have the feeling that his boss man is aware of OOO for some reason. We entered the academy's giant auditorium, filled to the brim with people. I whistled knowing there was a lot of people. We looked over until we heard a familiar voice. We looked and saw Yang waving. Ruby. Over here. I saved you a spot. Oh. Hey, I gotta go. See you after the ceremony. She said to the three of us before we left. I looked at John and spoke. I'm gonna find a seat. It was nice meeting you, John. I said as Ank and I walked away. I was trying to find a spot until I found an empty seat by the same black-haired girl with the bow from before as she continues to read a book. Excuse me, is this seat taken? I asked her. She shook her head, showing that the seat isn't taken. I then sat down as I moved my sheathed sword onto my lap as Ank leaned against the wall across from my right. Knowing that the girl was still reading that book, I looked at the dog tag locket that was hanging on my neck as I grabbed it and pressed a hidden switch on the side, making it open up. It revealed myself when I was little, but also my parents and my little sister. When they died, I managed to ask Mr. Stewart to make the photo smaller, in which it is now in the locket, in the shape of military dog tags. I quickly closed it when Professor Ashpan was readying the microphone with Glinda beside him. I'll keep this brief. You have traveled here today in search of knowledge, to hone your craft and acquire new skills, and when you have finished, you plan to dedicate your life to the protection of the people. But I look amongst you, and all I see is wasted energy, in need of purpose, direction. Ank scoffed at Ashpan's words as others whisper among themselves. You assume knowledge will free you of this, but your time at this school will prove that knowledge can only carry you so far. It is up to you to take the first step. Ashpan then leaves as Glinda steps up to talk. You will gather in the ballroom tonight. Tomorrow, your initiation begins. Be ready. You're dismissed. She said. I got up from my seat before looking at the girl. Well, thanks for letting me sit here. I thanked her as I grabbed my sheathed Metagaliber and placed it over my back and left as Ank followed. The first night at Beacon, and already, students are splayed about in sleeping bags. Ruby wore a sleeveless black shirt with a heart-shaped wolf head on the front with white pajama pants decorated with hearts and a blindfold. Yang wore an orange one-piece shirt with her emblem and a darker shade on her chest and black short shorts. For me, while I simply slept wearing the same pants and shirt but didn't have my jacket or shoes on. Plus I was sleeping in another part of the ballroom, a spacey part at that, where it was only me and Ank. Ank just sat against the wall as he kept his eyes closed. I looked at the dog tag locket again and opened it to reveal the old photo of my family picture. I placed my hand over my face again, masking my face from remembering those painful memories. The grim will sure kill me knowing that I am hiding my emotions of sadness, regret, grief, and loneliness. I noticed a candle light up and I saw that girl again, wearing sleepwear that appears to be a black yukata, with gray and white as a secondary color setup. I also noticed Ruby and her sister walking up to her. Choosing to ignore it, I turned around as I placed the locket under my shirt knowing that I do this every night before I sleep. After 3 minutes, I heard the girls arguing but I wanted to sleep until Ankh spoke up. "Oi, you 3 girls over there, be quiet. Some prefer our sleep, so shut it and go to sleep," Ankh ordered to Ruby, Yang, and Weiss from the other side of the ballroom. They looked at him as they slowly nodded knowing that they believe Ankh is my bodyguard. When they went back to their sleeping bags, Ankh closed his eyes again. The black-haired girl still looked like she just wanted to continue reading, but I guess the 3 interrupted her reading. I sighed as I got up and carefully walked towards her. She took notice of my approach. "Something you need?" she asked, irritated. "I am not here to make you upset or anything knowing you are really focused on that book," I assured, quietly. "I just want to tell you that there is a lot of space where I'm at." I pointed to where my sleeping bag and Ankh are as she could see that no one was around that area except Ankh and I. "You are welcome to go sleep in that area. Not much of the students are there to bother you," I offered before I went back to my sleeping bag. In a minute, I heard a small thud making me look to my left and see that black hair girl taking an empty spot. She then went back to reading her book until a question came up on my mind, but I didn't want to be rude. "I don't want to be rude, but what's your name?" I asked, rather nervous knowing that she is reading. "It's Blake," the black hair girl said. "What is your name?" she asked, peeked behind her book. "Enrique," I answered. "And good night, Blake." I then turned away and slowly went to sleep. Meanwhile in the city, Vale police were gathered in the highway as they aimed their guns at the 4 approaching humanoids. While we greed were sealed, the humans and faunus have changed. The feline-like humanoid remarked as he had his hands behind his head. "They seem more of a nuisance now." "That's true, although their foolishness seems about the same." The aquatic-like humanoid agreed. "How sad." The other 2 humanoids walked forward. "Man, where do we go now?" the bug-like humanoid said as he crossed his arms. "They sure are noisy." The tough-looking humanoid moved its head as an elephant-like trunk extended to one of the police cars that has an officer inside and brought it close to him as he then began to get on it and smash the glass. The officer quickly got out, but the humanoid grabbed him and smashed him to the ground, creating a crater before throwing him with the officers, making them shoot at the humanoids. The police were trying to fire their bullets at them, but it didn't kill the humanoids. Their weapons were meant to kill Grim and such, but now this is a new enemy they have faced. The bug-like humanoid jumped forward as it began to slash some of the officers down as one tried his best to shoot the humanoid but instead got thrown out of the highway. It then looked at the feline-like humanoid. "You know what to do, Kazari," the bug-like humanoid said to the feline-like humanoid now named Kazari. "Sure thing," Kazari answered when he jumped on top of the car before he thrusted his arms out as a yellow energy headed towards the police, sending them away as some cars fell out of the highway. "Why can't I have more fun?" The tough-looking humanoid pouted like a child. The aquatic-like humanoid placed her hands on the tough-looking humanoid's cheeks. "Don't you worry, Gamel, you will. She assured in a sisterly manner, making Gamel nod like a child. "Let us continue," the bug-like humanoid said. The 4 continued their travel in Vale. I opened my eyes and saw Ankh as he opened his eyes. "Well, looks like you're awake," Ankh said as I sat up. "Now get up, after this initiation, I still need you to gather cell medals for me." I grabbed my shoes and jacket as I put them on and pulled my locket from under my shirt and let it hang around my neck. "I get it, Ankh," I said. "Let's eat breakfast before we even continue anything." "All right. Knowing you need food so you can survive, then let's go," Ankh said as he got up as well. We followed some students as we soon made it to a cafeteria from the looks of it, and Ank and I got ourselves food. I began to eat as Ank ate his. Tastes different than that ice candy from yesterday, he remarked. That ice candy you ate before was ice cream, I said. If I have enough money, I'll go buy them if you want. He looked at me for a moment before going back to eating his food. Whatever, he scoffed. But he wasn't denying it, showing that he likes ice cream more than the food we are eating now. It wasn't until Ank spotted something cause him to shiver, and no. He muttered. What's wrong, Ank? I asked before I turns to see another student have fried chickens on their plate passing us. I looked at him, then at the food that passed us. It's just chicken, what's wrong with that? I asked until I remembered. Oh, I forgot. You don't like to see food that involves birds. Let's leave, he said as he got up. I nodded as I followed. After getting everything ready, we were in a locker room as students were getting their weapons. I digged through my pockets to count the cell medals I got with the sword as my locker was in front of me. Okay, I have 6 cell medals for the sword. I reached in the locker but didn't feel my sword. Hey! What happened to my sword? I looked around until I saw Ruby showing it to Yang. See, Yang. This is that sword I was telling you about. Now do you believe me? She said. Ruby, what are you doing with my sword? I questioned. She jumped as she laughed nervously. Sorry, Enrique. Yang didn't believe me that I saw a sword like this in person. I had to show it to her. She explained. Ank walked past the two as he grabbed my sword, turned me around, and placed it in the sheath. Don't mess with others' toys next time, Ank said as he turned me back around to face them. Anyways, Ruby, the sword is called Metajalabur, I said. And be careful with it next time. She nodded. I walked away until I noticed Blake getting her weapons from her locker. Hey Blake, I greeted. Good luck on the initiation. She nodded as she closed her locker and walked away before stopping. You too, she said before continuing to walk. I looked at my locket around my neck once more and opened it. Survival, I muttered before closing it and placed my hand over my face, masking my painful memories. We then heard an announcement in the intercom system. Would all first-year students please report to Beacon Cliff for initiation? Again, all first-year students report to Beacon Cliff immediately. Let's go, Ank said as he walked past me. All right, I said as I followed him. We were at the cliffside as Ank was looking at the forest. The Grimm haven't changed at all for the past 800 years, he said as he stared at the forest. I looked at him. That is how long they have been here? I asked. He nodded. We then heard the microphone with Ashpan about to talk. For years, you have trained to become warriors, and today, your abilities will be evaluated in Emerald Forest, he said. TCH, that name is still stuck to that forest? Ank said as he watches. Now, I'm sure many of you have heard rumors about the assignment of teams. Well, allow us to put an end to your confusion. Each of you will be given teammates today, Glinda said. Ha! I said. Never knew that this school puts students into teams. These teammates will be with you for the rest of your time here at Beacon. So it is in your best interest to be paired with someone with whom you can work well. Ashpan continued. I looked at Ank knowing that he is keeping me alive despite being agreed. Not to mention, I still am trying to remember the episodes, but I couldn't remember much. That being said, the first person you make eye contact with after landing will be your partner for the next 4 years. My eyes widen after hearing that. After you've partnered up, make your way to the northern end of the forest. You will meet opposition along the way. Do not hesitate to destroy everything in your path. or you will die. I trembled a bit knowing that I barely fought. I am sure gonna be killed by the Grimm, but I still don't know what they look like. You will be monitored and graded through the duration of your initiation, but our instructors will not intervene. You will find an abandoned temple at the end of the path containing several relics. Each pair must choose one and return to the top of the cliff. You will guard that item, as well as your standing, and grade you appropriately. Are there any questions? Ajpan asked. I heard John's voice. Yeah, sir? Ajpan didn't see it as he spoke up again. Good. Now, take your positions. He said. I was wondering why he meant by that until I saw students being launched from the tiles. I looked down then at Ankh. Ankh, I said. He just stood next to me and we were both launched into the forest. Aha! I screamed as we were falling into the forest. I covered myself as I was falling branch by branch until I landed on my feet. Wait, what? I looked up and saw Ankh holding me by the back of my jacket as he was sitting on the branch. Thanks, Ankh. I thanked him once again. He let go of me as he jumped down. Let's go finish this, he said until he looked at the bush. What is it, Ankh? I asked until I looked at where his sights were on. I was seeing two red eyes. What is that? Before we knew it, it charged as Ankh forced me to duck before we looked back and saw what tried to attack us. It was pitch black on its body with bone-like armor as well as being bipedal. It looked menacing as well. A Beowulf, Ankh said. They still look ugly back then and still are now. Wait, a Beowulf? I asked as it growls at us. One of the Grimm, he answered. My eyes widened as I quickly unsheathed my sword as my hands shake in fear of the Grimm. It slowly crawled toward the both of us. Hey Ankh, what do I do? I asked. Face it. There will be more Grimms in the future despite the greed and yummies. I need you to get ready for them. But don't take a lot of damages. Ankh said. But I said until the Grimm pounced making me duck again. I tightened the grip on my sword as Ankh jumped onto a branch. The Beowulf charged once more as I quickly moved before using the Metajalabur to strike dumbly at its side. This caused the Grimm to stumble back as it growled in anger. Crap! I said. 3 minutes earlier. In the middle of the forest, RWBY lands in a crouch, then darts off with a single mantra in her mind. Gotta find Yang. Gotta find Yang. Gotta find Yang. Gotta find. She repeated. Yang. Yang. She shouted. Oh, this is bad. This is really bad. What if I can't find her? What if someone finds her first? Well, there's always John. He's nice. He's funny. I don't think he's very good in a fight, though. Ooh. What about Blake? So mysterious, so calm. Plus, she likes books. Then again, I'm not sure I'd be able to hold a conversation with her. Okay, who else do I know in this school? There's Young, John, Blake. There's Enrique. He seems to be okay along with his bodyguard Ankh. Who else is there? Time seems to slow down as RWBY skids to a halt in front of Weiss as she is turning to face her. She stops just in time for their eyes to meet and a pause follows. This ends when Weiss turns on her heel and walks the other way. Wait. We're supposed to be teammates, RWBY said as she followed her slightly. Weiss continued to work her way through the brush, only to find a pinned John hanging from the tree. She gave him a dirty look and then turned around, grabbing a depressed RWBY by the hood, dragging her along. By no means does this make us friends. You came back. RWBY was too busy celebration to care that she was the second pick as she was quite literally dragged off. Hey wait. Come back. Who's gonna got me down from here? John cried out, his arms flailing as he was pinned to the tree. "John? Do you still have room for me on your team?" Pyrrha had appeared, smiling kindly to him to retrieve her javelin. John did all that he could do, which was cross his arms and pout. "Very funny." He then turned back to smile to her lightly, which she reciprocated. Back with Weiss and RWBY, the two were stalking off into the forest, Weiss in the lead with her usual temper flaring. RWBY called up to her, lagging behind. "What's the hurry? I will not have my grade in my mission be delayed because you were too slow. I swear if I get a bad grade because of you." RWBY then zipped directly ahead of Weiss in a small shower of rose petals. "What the dash? I'm not slow, see? You don't have to worry about that. Just because I don't exactly know how to deal with people, doesn't mean I don't know how to deal with monsters. You're about to see a whole new side of me today, Weiss. After it's all over, you're going to be like, wow, that RWBY girl is really cool, and I want to be her friend." RWBY then zipped off again in a shower of rose petals, with Weiss waving her hand to get them out of her face. "You may be fast, but you still excel at wasting time." Weiss then glanced around, the forest darkening. She glanced around nervously into the brush, where several pairs of gleaming red eyes appeared from the bushes. Slowly, several black wolf-like Grimm pushed through the brush, the nearest one giving a howl. Yang walked through the forest floor, pushing aside bushes as she made her way through the area. "Hello? Is anyone out there? Hello? I'm getting bored here." She glanced off to the side, parting a bush and peeking through it. "Someone there? RWBY, is that you?" Her eyes trailed upward, blinking and grinning. "Nope." Immediately, she rolled off to her side as a large black bear-like Grimm swiped a claw at the area she evacuated. Another Ursa followed out of the bushes as Yang flicked her wrists, her Ember Celica shotgun gauntlets unfolding, ready for use. As one of the Ursa charged her, jumping to pounce, Yang pulled back her arm, the gauntlet cocking, before she buried her fist in its chest. The shotgun shells fired off and sent the attacker flying. The second Urus charged her, which she sent one fist flying upward in an uppercut, and pushed the other fist behind her, using the shotgun's recoil to enhance the kick she sent to the monster's midsection. You guys wouldn't have happened to have seen a girl in a red hood, would you? Both Ursas stood up on their hind legs, giving another growl, which grinned too. You could have just said no. The first Ursa charged her once again, taking two swipes at her with its clawed hands, which she dodged with a back handspring. Geez, you two couldn't hit the broadside of, She then noticed a flowing lock of her golden hair fluttering down in front of her, hitting the ground in deathly silence. Yang's eyes were overshadowed for a moment as the two Ursas looked at each other in confusion. You, monster! She brought the Ember Celica down to her sides, her eyes taking on a fiery red glow as her body was shrouded in flame. She immediately rushed the Ursa that had killed her hair, driving a straight punch into its gut before following up with an uppercut, then several savage blows to its chest, shotgun bursts firing off on every impact made to the poor creature. She sent the Ursa flying after several chasing combination through several trees in a row of flames. She turned to the other Ursa that stood on its hind legs. What? You want some too? A shadow then appeared behind the Ursa, and the monster fell at the blonde's feet. Behind it, stood Blake with a small smirk. Yang returned that smirk with another. I could have taken it. Now! Glinda was holding onto a tablet as she walked up to Ojban. The second last pair has been formed, sir. She said as she taps the screen. However, the young man that is with the arm possessor hasn't found a partner. She looked at Ojban as he was busy watching footage of the young man and the arm that possessed the officer. Sir? I think he should stay as he is. He suggested as he watched the young man swing the unknown sword at the Grimm. Despite lack of training, I am sure he will progress. He changed the footage to the video from the previous day of the young man becoming OOO. And something bothers me about that ability of his. What do you mean? Ojban rewind the footage to the part where the red arm gave the young man a stone that turned into a belt. The rock that became a belt. Something tells me that the arm friend of his is much more older than we think. he said. And that young man holds the item from the lost civilization of Remnant. This made Glinda look shocked, knowing that the lost civilization was once ruled by a greedy king that nearly caused total destruction in Remnant. I took heavy breaths, knowing the adrenaline rushing through my body as I look at the Beowulf. It took me a while, but I managed to defeat it. Why does that have to be so difficult? Why not just have a Grim that is as small as a simple worm? I groaned. Ankh jumped down from the tree. Let's head north. We still have more to go. Right, I said as I followed him. After a little while, we made it to some temple as I saw that there were some relics while some spots showed that they were already taken. Well, this is it, I said. He looked at me before walking past me. Let's get the relic and head back. I nodded as I grabbed a crystal chess piece and followed him until we heard gunshots making me run. When we followed the source, we saw Ruby, Yang, Blake, Weiss, John, and 3 other unfamiliar people fighting a giant scorpion. That is one giant scorpion, I said, frightened until I saw that Ruby charged at the scorpion and got knocked back. Ruby! Yang exclaimed as she runs forward to her. My eyes widened before I looked at Ankh. Ankh! I need to transform. We can't just let them die, I shouted. Don't you care what happens to them? He then grabbed my cheeks with his great arm. Don't get the wrong idea, he said as he released his grip and pointed at me. Your job is to gather medals despite this initiation and being in this school, he continued. You don't get to save lives for free. You will do as I say. I looked back at the others as Ruby was running away from the scorpion until a giant blackbird threw a feather and pinned Ruby from her cloak to the ground. My memories of my family was coming back again as I look at my hand. I can even hear my cry from when I was little, when I lost my mom and little sister in the car accident and seeing them die. I looked at him, then at the scorpion. I decided to charge forward as Ankh yelled, "Hey!" I got my Meta-Jalabur ready as I charged. I also saw Yang reached out to Ruby in vain. Ruby! Not today. I struck the back of the scorpion's tail as its attention was now focused on me. I stood back as I looked at it. Come on, you oversized scorpion and bird. Get me, not them, I shouted as the 2 beasts roared at me before I looked at the others. You guys go. I will handle them. I looked at the Grim again. That's it. Chase after me. I have the emotions you are drawn to. The bird circled back as the scorpion charged at me as I began to run for my life. I looked back as I saw them chase after me. The bird threw feathers at me until one barely passed by my arm, resulting with a small cut. This showed that the feathers from the bird is a sharp and solid feather. I continued to run until I soon met a dead end. I looked back as I got Meta-Jalabur ready with the scorpion and bird was now in front. I clenched onto my dog tag locket. I guess I will be seeing you guys, I muttered as a tear fell down from my face, knowing this was something I won't survive from. Before the scorpion could attack, it roared in pain, and that was then I noticed that Ankh was on top of its tail with his great arm clenched onto the stinger. Ankh! If you die, I am in a heap of trouble, you know? He said as he showed me the O driver. Transform then. Make a promise to me first, I said. Let me transform whenever I want to. Don't prioritize medals over people's live, I continued. If you don't, I won't transform again. He looked at me and sighed in defeat. Fine. He tossed it to me before he got swung away from the scorpion. The scorpion was gonna attack him until its stinger was in ice, causing it to stumble. Ha! We looked at saw Ruby and the other 7. I thought I told you guys to get out of here, I said. I am not leaving a friend behind, Ruby argued. Neither will us, Yang said as the others nodded. I placed the O driver on my waist as the belt appeared. Like I said, Aang tossed me the core medals as I caught them. Saving lives is what I now do. I insert Taka and Bada first before I place Tora last and tilted the driver. And I will continue on helping people. I grabbed the O-scanner and did the similar pose that Eiji did and scanned the medals. Henshin. I moved the scanner to my chest. Taka. Tora. Bada. Tatoba Tatoba Tatoba. I was then donned in the Tataba OOO armor as I took a deep breath and got into a fighting stance. However, the others were surprised with what happened to me. WW what? Weiss exclaimed. OOO. Ruby said. Whoa. Yang said. Interesting. Blake said. I heard the sound of a grasshopper as I decided to jump over the scorpion with the help of Bada legs and stand in front of my friends. I may be new to fighting, but my goal is to save lives. I said, determined. I heard the sound of a bird from the upper crest as the red glowed, showing that I am actually seeing something on the scorpion. Hey, Ankh, what does Taka do? Spot the weak points. Ankh answered. Oh. I said, but the others were surprised that my armor can detect weak points. I charged again towards the scorpion as I dodged its strike and struck its weak point, making it stumble back. Nice. I said, knowing that Taka will be helpful. Guys, that Nevermore is circling back. John said. We looked and saw the now called Nevermore coming towards us. Gotta think. I muttered as I tapped my helmet until a light bulb came up. I looked at the side of my belt knowing that those cell medals were transported to the medal holder. I grabbed 3 since I will be doing that attack from episode 2, but this time against two Grim. Hope this works. I said as I insert one. 1 chime went off before I insert another. 2 chimes went off before I insert the third one. Now, 3 chimes went off as I pushed the lever, showing the 3 cell medals in the Metagaliber. I got into a stance as the blue edge on the blade began to glow, making the others surprised. Stand back, you guys. I said as I used the O scanner to swipe across my sword. Triple scanning charge. I drew my arm back before swinging the blade at the 2 incoming Grim. Pure power cut through the air, the rock wall, the trees, and the 2 Grim. A line of white energy bisected everything in front of us at a diagonal angle. As the line was set, everything slid down the angle, including the trees, and the rock wall slid before going back to its original position, but the 2 Grim. They exploded in the process. I looked back at the others as they were utterly shocked with what I did. Ruby jaw dropped. What? I asked the 8. Ruby soon got in front of me. Oh my god. What is this word made of? Can I find a weapon like that? Any more of Tosa swords is still out here? She said, very fast. Where did you get a weapon like that? Weiss asked. I looked at the sword before I shrugged. Beats me, but I got it from a biker who said it came from the great man. I answered. He said the great man, his boss, made it for me. Ah. Ruby pouted. Anyways. I titled the driver to its original position before reverting to civilian form. We still have a test to complete. They slowly nodded as I looked at Ankh. Ankh. I said as I presented him the 3 core medals I used. He got up and wiped off the dust on his clothes. Just remember that we have medals to find. I will continue with that promise of yours of saving lives. He said, upset before he walked to me and grabbed the 3 medals. I slowly nodded as we followed the others. We were in the auditorium knowing that we survived, including myself. Right now, teams were being assigned as they were announced by Ojban. Russell Thrush. Carden Winchester. Dove Bronzewing. Sky Lark. Ojban said as the screen shows each of their profiles as the 4 said guys were lined up. The 4 of you retrieved the Black Bishop pieces. From this day forward, you will work together as Team CRDL, led by Carden Winchester. The audience gave one more wave of ovation while the four walk up to the stage to take their places in front of the headmaster as their faces fill the screen. John Ark, Lai Run, Pira Nikos, Nora Valkyrie. The four of you retrieved the white rook pieces. From this day forward, you will work together as Team JNPR. He continues. Led by John Ark. Ha! L led by. John said, surprised. Congratulations, young man. Ajpin commented. Blake Belladonna. Ruby Rose. Weiss Schnee. Yang Xiaolong emotions over the four as they stand before him. The four of you retrieved the white knight pieces. From this day forward, you will work together as Team RWBY. Led by Ruby Rose. Weiss looked to her right, surprised where Ruby was obviously shocked as Yang goes over to hug her sister. And now will Enrique step forward along with his guard, Ank. Ajpin said, causing some murmur. We looked at each other before we stepped forward as Ajpin spoke up. Young man, you have retrieved the crystal knight piece. A rather interesting choice knowing of the display you showed to protect the 8 students. He displayed a photo of me on screen as it also showed footage of my triple scanning charge attack. The students except Ruby and the other 7 were left utterly in awe for what I did, and their looks showed they should have had me on their teams. You will have the option to choose which teams you would like to assist from this day forward. He continued. So young man, which teams you would like to assist? I looked at the students along with Ruby and the others. I choose to help out Team RWBY. I answered. Someone once told me that one keeps their allies close but keep their friends closer and protect them as if it is their last stand. And those are my friends that I will help out to save lives. Ajpin showed a smile as he nodded. Very well, you will be assigned to both Team RWBY. He said as everyone applauded. I looked at my new friends as I nodded as they smiled back. It looks like things are shaping up to be an interesting year. Ajpin said. After a little while as students went to their respective and newly assigned dorms, I approached Ajpin. Ajpin, there is something I want to inform you. He looked at me. And what is that? I was wondering if you can allow me and Ank to leave class during certain situations. The monster you once saw, there will be more of them no matter the time of day. I explained. Ank gathers the coins they spill to prevent further danger. Ajpin took a sip before he looked at me for a moment until he spoke up. I will inform the staff of your task. He said. You certainly showed promise and chose a wise chess piece. I tilted my head. What do you mean? The knight represents people who protect and defend the citizens' lives, saving them from any danger that lies ahead. He answered. I was surprised as Ank scoffed. Well, thank you, Professor Ajpin. I thanked him. The both of us then walked to our dorm as I was about to unlock mine with a device called a scroll. Ank was given one too as he began to press keys here and there. I guess 800 years stuck in an ancient box made him see that us humans had evolved. As I was about to open the door, I noticed the room behind us, that was across the hall, open. I looked back and saw Ruby. Hey, Enrique. She said. I didn't know you were living in that dorm room. Well, yeah. I said as Ank walked inside the dorm room. I take it you and the others are getting ready for sleep? Yeah. And that sword move you did was so awesome. She said. Are you sure there is no place to find one like that? I'm sure. You heard what the biker said. I recalled. Ruby sighed. Anyways, you four sleep well. I said. You two as well. I closed the door behind me as I saw Ank looking at the 2 beds in the room. I might have something. I said as I walked past him. I began to move the bed around as I remembered those swing beds, so I gathered the blankets and sheets from the bed and using some rope that I surprisingly found and hanged it. There, knowing you like being on high places, you can sleep like that. I said. He walked to examine it, testing the rope for its strength to hold as he got on and turned away. Get rested, we have metals to find tomorrow. I chuckled. Alright, I said. And thanks, Ank. Despite being a heartless greed, you sure do have a heart to think about some people. I removed my jacket and shoes before I simply laid down on my bed. And note to self, buy additional clothes soon. As night appeared, in an abandoned mansion, the four humanoids looked around. This place can be of use for us. The bug-like humanoid said. I like this place. Gamel said, excited like a child. The bug-like humanoid turned to the door. Now if you excuse me, I have to search. He said as he left, searching for a host to create another yummy. To be continued.